Everyone, if I'm properly visible, audible, please give me a thumbs up. Great. Students are joining. We'll wait 1 minute. We'll start in a minute. Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to our live online classroom program for the aspirants who are appearing in the civil services exam in 2025. This is our first class with regards to Indian polity. In 32 classes, every class shall be of 3-hour duration. We will complete the entire syllabus of GS in Indian polity. But please understand, when it comes to GS paper 2, it deals with polity, governance, social justice, international relations. But in these 32 classes, we will focus on polity for prelims, polity for the mains exam. Governance will be taught separately, social justice will be taught separately, international relations will be taught separately. Since this is our first class, let me also briefly introduce you to our course. You may have just enrolled in this course and you would want to know what exactly do you expect from this course. Morning batch, and after a couple of weeks, we will start with the evening batch. So you will have classes in the morning from 6 to 9, and after a couple of weeks, classes in the evening from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. But if you have time and if you can attend both sets of classes in the morning as well as the evening. But I would advise, please follow one batch, either morning or evening, and be done with your classes. And if you look at the schedule, which is provided on your screen, if you have enrolled now, polity will be taught. And when polity would be taught, the start date and end date is provided in the timetable. After that, we will have modern history and post-independent India, then economics, then geography, so that you have a clear idea of when the classes would start, when a particular subject would be taught, and when I should expect my entire syllabus to be complete. And you would realize by looking at the schedule that your entire syllabus would be complete even before your prelims examination, which means once the prelims exam is over, you don't have to read anything new. You will have to focus on your optional, updating your current affairs, practicing answer writing, revision, and hopefully you will crack this examination. These live classes, apart from that, every Sunday, there will be a test. Whatever will be taught from Monday to Saturday, because the classes shall be conducted from Monday to Saturday, whatever will be taught from Monday to Saturday. For that, 20 MCQs will be given to you on Sunday, 5 descriptive questions will be given to you on Sunday. Please answer these questions, attend these tests, so that you can evaluate yourself before UPSC evaluates you. Because my dear, mains is all about answer writing. And whatever knowledge, whatever information you will gain from these lectures, unless and until you apply that knowledge, it makes no sense. Because ultimately, you will have to crack this examination. For that, revision and practice. These are the two most important ingredients for success. But sir, what about current affairs? Current affairs shall be taught every Tuesday and Thursday, 9:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. Now, how do we cover it? Normally, what happens is that in a coaching class or in an online class, there is one faculty reserved for current affairs. But it is not possible for this individual to be well-versed in all the subjects, polity, economics, geography, history, so on and so forth, international relations. So what we have done, because that would basically compromise the student experience, you may not be able to get everything that is required to crack this exam. That's why what we have done, we have segregated current affairs subject-wise. So polity-based current affairs, economics-based current affairs, science and tech, environment-based current affairs, the places and news related to art and culture, international relations. So every Tuesday and Thursday, subject-wise, your own teacher who teaches you these subjects will also cover the current affairs related to these subjects. So that through live classes, you are attending and completing the static plus dynamic portion of the syllabus. But let's say you have attended the classes now, and in the next 1 month or so, your entire polity would be over. Then you will never see me because I will be teaching other students, and you don't need to see me either because once you've completed the syllabus, why would you want to attend the class again and again? But you need to update current affairs. So all these 32 classes would be updated with current affairs as recent as possible. But what about next month and next to next month till the time of your prelims examination? For that, you just have to rely on the current affairs that we will have, current affairs sessions that we will conduct. So live classes plus current affairs plus practice. You don't need anything else. But sir, what about the books? What about the notes? What should be the strategy? Every single teacher, when he or she would start the classes, would also tell you how to approach this particular subject. Apart from class notes or class PPT, what extra would an individual require to complete that syllabus? That you will have to check with every teacher. And today, I will tell you about Indian polity. Indian polity is one of the most important subjects in the civil services examination. And the reason it is more important is because I teach it. But humor aside, why is it important? Because just look at the sheer number of marks that are allocated to the subject, both in prelims as well as the mains examination. Look at the trend. Sometimes 12, sometimes 20, sometimes 18. Consistently from Indian polity, 12 to 15, and it has gone up to 20 as well as 22 questions have been asked in the prelims examination from Indian polity alone. And you would know that sometimes the cutoff ranges from 87 to 90 to 100 maximum. And if from one subject alone, you would expect 44 marks or minimum 24 to 30 marks, imagine the significance of the subject. So Indian polity, one of the most important subjects for the civil services examination. But how do we judge the importance and significance of the subject? By looking at the marks that are allocated to the subject in the examination. And for prelims, mostly 12 to 15 questions. It can also go up to 22 questions can be asked and have been asked from Indian polity. That's number one. Number two, look at the marks allocated to the subject in mains examination. But before we start, I forgot to tell you something. There may be students in this class who are from the Hindi batch. There may be students in the class who are from the English batch. You may want to understand these concepts in Hindi as well as English and a mix of these two languages. But my dear friends, this particular batch is exclusively for the English medium aspirants. I won't be talking in Hindi. I won't use Hindi words. But I'm sure even if you are from Hindi background or English background, I'm pretty sure you would be able to understand whatever we are going to discuss, whatever I'm going to teach. But please don't expect Hindi words from me. Not that I'm against Hindi. Don't lynch me for that. The only reason is that this is an exclusive batch for the English students. Clear? Now, Indian polity is very important for the mains examination as well. And I told you, GS paper 2 talks about polity, talks about governance, talks about social justice and international relations. The three other subjects would be taught separately. Just focus on Indian polity. From Indian polity, sometimes 80, sometimes 100, sometimes 150 marks have been asked. That is why we say Indian polity is not the most, but one of the most important subjects for this examination because of the sheer number of marks allocated to the subject in prelims as well as the mains examination. But not just this. Your knowledge of constitution, your knowledge of laws, your knowledge of various Supreme Court judgments on important matters related to gender justice, related to freedom of speech and expression, related to how the society should be governed, that can play a very important role when you're writing an essay as well. So this subject, polity, not only relevant for prelims, but for mains GS paper 2, mains essay as well. And on top of that, this subject is going to be extremely helpful in your personality test as well. Personality test in the sense, before you appear and once you appear before the interview panel, you may be asked about the current political climate in India. In a sense, what is your take on the Citizenship Amendment Act, which the government is now saying we will implement before the Lok Sabha elections? What is your take on the recent Supreme Court ruling on Article 370? So the knowledge that you will acquire, gain from these classes would help you in prelims, would help you in mains GS paper 2, would help you in your essay, would also help in your personality test. And plus, it also helps in your daily life as well. As citizens, we need to know what are the rights that are available to us provided by the Constitution? What are the duties that we have vis-a-vis fellow individuals? What is the structure of governance in India? So this knowledge of Indian polity will also help in your day-to-day affairs when you're debating with your friend, when you're debating with an irritating uncle in your neighborhood. Long story short, Indian polity is very important. Please don't neglect it, and I will not let you neglect this. Now let's get started and understand if Indian polity is so important for prelims, mains, personality test, but exactly what do we need to cover in Indian polity? What exactly does Indian polity comprise of? First thing that you need to understand is that in Indian polity, we will have to focus on the Constitution. Starting off with preamble, how the states are organized in India or reorganized in India, what is citizenship and who and how can you become the citizen of India, then what are the fundamental rights provided to you by the Constitution, what are these directive principles of state policy, what is the role of executive, legislature, judiciary, how elections are conducted in this country, can EVMs be hacked? So whatever is mentioned in the Constitution, you will have to study that. That is the focus area number one in Indian polity. But you don't have to discuss, understand Constitution so that you are able to argue before the courts in this country, so that you can become a lawyer or an advocate before the Supreme Court or high courts in this country. You should have sufficient knowledge of Constitution that would enable you and help you crack this exam. Nothing more, nothing less. Yes, the knowledge that you will gain of Indian Constitution, it may help you win a debate competition in your college, it may help you win an argument with your friend at your workplace, but that should not be your purpose. The purpose should be, I have to gain significant knowledge and sufficient knowledge, which will ensure that I'm able to answer every question that is asked in the examination, I'm able to score better so that I'm able to crack the exam in my first attempt. That should be your ultimate objective. So first, we will have to focus on the Constitution of India, then the various laws which are passed by the Parliament. For example, Citizenship Amendment Act, for example, Aadhaar, for example, the various bills that may be passed by the Parliament, that have been passed by the Parliament recently, that may be passed by the Parliament over a period of time, by the next Lok Sabha, we will have to focus on that as well. And the last one, judicial verdicts. Mostly focusing on the Supreme Court verdicts. For example, why and how did the Supreme Court say that EWS reservation, which provides 10% reservation for economically weaker sections of the society, why and how is it constitutional? What Supreme Court is going to rule on electoral bonds? What Supreme Court is going to rule on the Citizenship Amendment Act? So three important focus areas for Indian polity. One, we will have to focus on the Constitution of India. We will also have to compare this Constitution with the Constitution of other countries. For example, what is the constitutional provision related to Parliament when it comes to Britain, when it comes to United States? Because when you look at the syllabus, it says comparison of the world constitution as well. So we will have to compare our constitutional scheme with the scheme which is present in various other countries as well. So Constitution of India. Second, the laws passed by the Parliament. Third, various judicial verdicts important for the examination. So what did we discuss? I first gave you a brief idea about what is this live online classroom program. Is that clear? Then we looked at what is the significance of Indian polity because of its relevance in prelims, mains, personality tests, because of the sheer marks that are allocated to the subject. But if it is so important, exactly what do we need to study? Constitution, laws passed by the Parliament, and various judicial verdicts. But then, sir, how do we approach this subject? What are the books that we need to follow if we need to master Indian polity for the examination? Now listen to me carefully. When a student attends the class for the first time, what are the questions on her mind? What are the questions on his mind? Sir, if I attend your classes, I make notes of your classes, I download the PPTs as well, then I read Lakshmikant, then I read DD Basu, then I read the two NCRTs, then I follow the Hindu and the Indian Express, I will also follow the bare act of the Constitution. Sir, is that enough or should I read something else as well? How do I answer it? I would say this is enough. Couple of months later, sir, it's getting too much because I can't focus on other subjects. Sir, your class PPTs plus Lakshmikant plus DD Basu, newspapers, is that enough? Enough. Few months later, sir, only your class notes would suffice. Don't become book collectors if you need to become a district collector. That's what we keep on telling students. But what is it that you need to follow if you need to master current affairs and Indian polity? Just attend my class, make notes of whatever we discuss in the class, revise from M. Lakshmikant, and then link it with the current affairs. Full stop. Lakshmikant, with due respect, is a badly written book. It's just a collection of facts from various different sources, and it has been presented in front of you. It won't teach you concepts. It won't give you conceptual clarity. You won't understand it from the requirements perspective of this exam. But it is still important. Why is it important? Because this exam, we have prelims and we have the mains. In prelims exam, UPSC will judge you whether you have the factual clarity, whether you have the conceptual clarity. And in mains, you will need to elaborate. You would need to analyze the various topics that are mentioned in the syllabus or which have occurred in the current affairs. For example, questions have been asked previously that when a bill is presented to a joint sitting of the two houses of the Indian Parliament, this bill needs to be passed by what type of majority? Is it simple majority? Is it two-third majority? Is it three-fourth majority? What type of majority is it? So you need to be focused on your facts that this particular bill, which is presented to a joint sitting, which we will discuss later, should be passed by simple majority. As simple as that. This is a fact. UPSC will test you on this. But UPSC may also ask you, and it has asked, under what circumstances does the Constitution provide for joint sitting of the two houses? Where can it be held? Where can it not be conducted? With the reasons thereof. So what are the areas where joint sitting of the Indian Parliament can be convened? For what type of bills can it be convened? For what type of bills it cannot be convened? And you also have to tell me what are the reasons. This you won't find in Lakshmikant. For that, what we need to understand is that in civil services exam, for prelims and mains, your approach has to be different. Approach in the sense, for prelims, you will have to focus on facts, concepts, and even then in Lakshmikant, there are some important concepts which are missing, which you won't be able to understand when the question is asked in the examination. There have been so many questions asked which you can't find in Lakshmikant, which even if you read Lakshmikant end to end, you won't be able to answer. I'm not scaring you. I'm just telling you this is the reality. This is the truth. Please face it. For that, what you need to do, attend my classes. I would ensure that we start from scratch. I would assume that all of you are engineers who have never read Indian polity in their lives, or even if you have never understood. So I will start from scratch, and gradually, we will build the concepts, and I will take you to a level where you will be able to answer questions in the exam. This is my objective. My objective is not to make you constitutional experts. My objective is not to make you the distinguished jurist so that you're able to, so that you're now qualified to become the judge of the Supreme Court. No, that's the purpose. So attend my classes, but please revise from Lakshmikant and then link it with current affairs. Current affairs in the sense, whenever a judgment is given by the court, and then the newspapers publish the analysis of that judgment, critically analyze that judgment, either praise that judgment or criticize that judgment, make notes. Although we will cover that in current affairs as well, but make notes so that you're linking the two. If there is a uniform civil code passed in Uttarakhand, whether that is good or bad, what are the provisions of that code, what are the reforms that we require, that would be part of current affairs. So your Lakshmikant, my class notes or my class PPTs, my class lectures, plus current affairs, that should be more than enough for you to crack this examination, to crack all the questions that are asked in Indian polity. Is that clear? Done. But if you have got time, if at all you have got time, please read these very two important, beautifully written books, which will lay your foundation. One is The Political Theory of Class 11. The other is Indian Constitution at Work, Class 11. If you have got time. If you don't have time, don't worry. If you want to rely on me, I will include, and I have included concepts from these two NCERT books so that you don't have to read them on your own. But if you have got time, please read. If not, do not worry. But also, whenever we will discuss concepts, during that period, hold your horses. Don't message, don't comment, don't ask questions. Now you'll tell me, sir, you're not encouraging questions. No, my dear, I'm encouraging questions. All I'm saying is, when I'm teaching, I'm in a different zone. I'm looking at the screen. I'm not looking at the comments. So I won't be in a position to even answer your questions. But once I'm done with the topic, then I will give you time. Please answer as many questions as possible. Shoot me with as many questions as possible. And I promise to the best of my ability, I will answer your doubts. But I'm 100% sure once you allow me to complete a topic, there won't be a doubt in your mind. Even if there is, I'm there to help. That's my purpose. Clear? Done? Now let's get started. And don't ask me questions now. Just listen to me calmly, patiently, sit back, relax, make notes. Done. If in Indian polity, we will have to study constitution. For that, the first thing that we need to understand is what is a constitution? And we say constitution is a supreme law of land. And the supreme law of land enjoys special legal sanctity. What is a constitution? One definition would be constitution is the supreme law of land, and the supreme law of land enjoys a special legal sanctity. Supreme in the sense, there is a hierarchy. For example, in a corporate world, there is the CEO, then there are various CXOs, then there are the presidents, senior vice presidents, vice presidents. So there is always a hierarchy in a corporate world. Similarly, there is hierarchy in the government as well. There is prime minister, there are cabinet ministers, there are ministers of state with independent charge, then there are ministers of state, there can be deputy ministers as well, for example. But when we look at the laws and rules in India which govern us, the rules that govern all of us, if there is a hierarchy for that, we can say at the top of the hierarchy, we have the constitution. That is why we say it is a supreme law of land. Constitution, followed by the laws passed by the parliament or the legislature, then the rules made by the executive. We will discuss slightly later what is the role of legislature, what is the role of executive, but very briefly here, any body which is responsible for making laws, that body we call legislature. For example, Indian Parliament in Delhi, it is responsible for making laws for the entire country, and we call it a legislature. Karnataka Legislative Assembly, it has the power to make laws for the entire Karnataka state, we call it a legislature. So legislature is a body whose primary objective is to make laws. Similarly, there is another body which is responsible for implementing those laws, which is responsible for the daily administration of the country, which is responsible for maintaining law and order in the society. That body is executive. Clear? If you look at the hierarchy, we say at the top of the hierarchy, we have the constitution. Then we have the laws passed by the parliament. Then we have the rules made by the executive. So what is the difference? Can you tell me what is the difference between the laws and the rules? For example, which we will discuss in citizenship chapter, 2019, Indian Parliament passed a law called Citizenship Amendment Act. We will discuss that in great detail. I'm just giving an example right now, wherein it said, if you are an illegal migrant from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and if you have entered India on or before 31st December 2014, you will not be treated as a legal migrant. And who is this illegal migrant? Somebody who has entered India without visa, somebody who was allowed to enter India and stay in India for 6 months, but now this particular individual is overstaying. He was meant to stay in India for 6 months, now he's staying for 6 years, which means you're an illegal migrant. You are not supposed to be here. And under the laws in India, illegal migrants cannot become citizens of India, cannot apply for the citizenship of India. But now the Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, what it says that if you are an illegal migrant, but from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and if you have entered on or before this date, we will not treat you illegal migrant. So you're not illegal migrant for us. So when you're not illegal migrant, that means you can apply for citizenship and we will grant you citizenship. But to implement this law, we need rules. Rules are made by the executive. Rules are made by the bureaucrats. The Ministry of Home Affairs will have to come up with the rules. Why Ministry of Home Affairs? Because on all citizenship matters, the ministry responsible is MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs. It has to make rules. What are these rules? Rules in the sense, how can an individual prove that he or she has entered India on or before 31st December 2014? For that, do you have any documents? These are the documents that are required, for example. How can an individual prove that you have come from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and you have not come from Mars or Jupiter or Saturn? For that, these are the documents that you need to furnish. So to implement this law, we need rules. So when we say constitution is the supreme law of land, we say that in this hierarchy of laws, for example, at the top of the hierarchy, we have the constitution. But not just this. The same constitution enjoys what we call special legal sanctity. And what do we mean by special legal sanctity? Can rules passed by the executive violate the laws passed by the parliament? No. Can laws passed by the parliament violate the constitution? No. That means every rule that executive makes has to conform to the law passed by the parliament, has to be in agreement with the law passed by the parliament, and at the same time cannot violate the constitution. Because constitution is the supreme law of land, it enjoys special legal sanctity in the sense that any law or any rule passed by the executive, if it violates the constitution, it has to be struck down, it will be struck down, it cannot continue. How? Let me give an example. The year was 2000. Information Technology Act was passed. But then in the year 2008, Section 66 capital A was added to Information Technology Act. According to this Section 66 capital A, if you are using an electronic device, which can be a smartphone, which can be a laptop, which can be a smart desktop, if you're using an electronic device, and through this electronic device, you are transmitting messages, and these messages cause annoyance, they annoy somebody, it is a crime, you can be sent to jail. Bala Sahab Thackeray, the supremo of a political party, Shiv Sena, in Maharashtra, he passed away. Now the workers of the Shiv Sena, what they did, they organized a bandh, enforced a bandh in the entire state. One lady, innocent lady, she posted on her Facebook. Her name was Shaheen Darda. Why is there a need to organize and enforce a bandh in the memory of Bala Sahab Thackeray? One of her friends liked her status. Both these women were arrested. Why? Because according to Section 66 capital A, if you are using an electronic device, they used a phone to transmit messages through Facebook, which cause annoyance to the members of the Shiv Sena, you can be arrested, you can be sent to jail, and they were sent to jail. And under many other circumstances also, the Section 66A was used, overused, misused, abused. Then came one lady, a law student, Shreya Singhal. And this case came to be known as Shreya Singhal versus Union of India, 2015. Shreya Singhal asked, my lord, do we have a constitution? The court said, yes, my dear, we have a constitution, one of the lengthiest constitutions of the world. In that constitution, do we have fundamental rights? Obviously, we have fundamental rights. What are you talking about? Do we have freedom of speech and expression? 110% we have freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a). If I have freedom of speech and expression, which is a fundamental right mentioned in the constitution, how can a law passed by the parliament or a section of that law violate my fundamental right? Because let's be clear, whatever I'm going to say, if it is truth, it will cause annoyance to you. What if there is a student who is attending the class regularly but is not revising, but that individual student is not practicing the test as well? I have to tell that student that no matter what, you will not clear this exam. Will this not cause annoyance to that student? But this is truth, and truth always causes annoyance. So if these two ladies, they did something on Facebook, posted something, they were expressing themselves. Were they inciting people to violence? Were they asking people to burn down the buses and cars, to pelt stones at the security forces? Were they igniting, instigating people to violence? No, they just expressed themselves. That is part of their fundamental right. Shreya Singhal argued that this particular section, Section 66 capital A, it violates the freedom of speech and expression enshrined in the Constitution under Article 19(1)(a). Supreme Court said you are absolutely right. Why? Because the Constitution is the supreme law of land. Can any law passed by the parliament violate the Constitution? No. Can any rule made by the executive violate the Constitution? No. Why? Because Constitution, what it is a supreme law of land which enjoys special legal sanctity. That's what the Constitution is. But sir, what else is the Constitution? We have legislature, we have executive, we have judiciary, which we will explain later in great detail. Legislature's job is to pass laws. Clear? Executive's job is to implement the laws. Judiciary's role is to ensure that we give justice to the people in India. If somebody has wronged you, the judiciary, the courts will be there to impart justice, to punish those who are guilty. Where is it mentioned? Where is the role and responsibility of these three organs mentioned? That's mentioned in the Constitution. So what Constitution also is, it allocates the areas of influence or the role allocation of the three different organs of the state. That also is what a constitution is. But sir, what else is the constitution? Let's go back to history. There was a demand by the people that please allow Indians to also write the Indian civil service exam. There was a demand that Indians should be in the majority of Indian civil services. This demand was not met. There was a demand that please treat us equally the way you treat other Europeans. Even if there is an Indian judge, this Indian judge cannot try foreigners because this is the land of snake charmers. How can this native punish Europeans because we are from the civilized world? And they would say that it is a burden on us. We have to civilize these uncivilized people. So there was no equality, there was no justice, there was no liberty, there was no freedom. But these all were our aspirations. But these aspirations were not met because we were governed by an alien government. We were governed by a foreign power. These were not our representatives. This was not our government. But once India liberated herself, we became independent. Constituent Assembly met. And what is this Constituent Assembly? Basically a group of people from India who came together to draft the Constitution, to write the Constitution. They met for the first time on December 9, 1946. And then for the next couple of years, painstakingly, they wrote a beautiful document known as the Constitution of India. And now this Constitution talks about we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, political, liberty, equality, fraternity, dignity of an individual. So whatever aspirations we had, those aspirations we could not achieve, we could not realize when we were under the colonial government, when we were under the foreign power, when we were under the alien power. But now all these aspirations have been met once we have been liberated and once we have the Constitution. So this Constitution, my dear, is a document of people's faith and aspirations. So when Constitution talks about liberty, equality, fraternity, dignity, that primarily means that these were our aspirations. And now these aspirations have been given shape by this Constitution which we have drafted. Can aspirations remain static? No. Once you were a child, your aspiration may have been, I want to be a bus driver because that looked fascinating. Somebody is driving a bus. Later on, my aspiration is to become a pilot. Later on, my aspiration is to become a dacoit because we have watched a movie where the protagonist is a dacoit. Over a period of time, a police officer, an IS officer. Aspirations keep on changing. And once you reach a certain age, then you don't need money, you just need peace of mind. You just need what in public administration we call self-actualization. I have money, I have everything. I just need to do something which will give me something where I will feel motivated from deep inside. Whatever that may be. Aspirations are not static. Aspirations keep on changing. So what were the aspirations of the people of this country in 1950 may not be the aspirations, may not have been the aspirations of people in 1970, in 2024, and possibly in 2050. That's what Pandit Nehru said, the first Prime Minister of India. Every genuine aspiration should be capable of realization. And that is why we have to, we can, and we should amend the Constitution as well. That is how Constitution, which has been drafted, how this Constitution can be changed as well, how this Constitution can be altered as well. That also is mentioned in the Constitution itself under Article 368. So under Article 368, a bill can be passed in the Parliament to change the Constitution. There are some limitations which we will discuss later. Some things you can't change, but some things you can. Something related to the doctrine of basic structure, which Supreme Court has talked about, where Supreme Court has said that you can amend any provision of the Constitution, but not the basic structure. So Pandit Nehru said, treat this Constitution as a living organism, which grows and grows and grows. Dr. Ambedkar had a beautiful take on this matter. Dr. Ambedkar said, I'm sure that not all of us or all of you would be satisfied with the Constitution we have drafted. And it is obvious because you can't satisfy 100% of the people under no circumstance. Virat Kohli cannot satisfy 100% of Indians that I am the best batsman of the world. There will always be a debate whether it's Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo who is the GOAT. Not somebody you can slaughter, but the greatest of all time. So you can't satisfy all the people all the time. And Dr. Ambedkar said, I know you cannot, or most of you or some of you may not be satisfied with the Constitution. But if you are dissatisfied with this Constitution, all you need to get 2/3 majority in the Parliament. Get 2/3 majority and change the Constitution. But if you cannot get 2/3 majority, then I can safely say that only you are dissatisfied with the Constitution. Your dissatisfaction has not been shared by the larger, wider majority of the people. So what is a Constitution? Constitution is the supreme law of land which enjoys special legal sanctity. Constitution is a document of people's faith and aspirations. Constitution is a document which allocates roles, responsibilities to various organs of the state. That's what the Constitution is. And Constitution also, it basically is a document which talks about what are the principles of the state. Principles in the sense, are we a republic government, republic state, or are we a monarchy? Are we democratic or autocratic? Those principles are enshrined in the Constitution. Our Constitution says that we are a republic. Republic in the sense that head of the state is an elected individual. Is Britain a democracy? Yes, it is. Is Britain a republic? No. Because the head of the state is a hereditary position. The head of the state is a monarch who occupies that post because of the hereditary. But in India, President Murmu is the president. Tomorrow, can her daughter, can her son become the president of India? Yes or no? This was a trick question. You're saying no. The answer is maybe. If you are eligible, contest elections, win the election. But just because you are the son or the daughter of the president, that doesn't mean that you will occupy this post because it has come to you as some sort of a grant in a hereditary position. And not just this, that's not the only definition of republic. Republic also means that this office of president is open for all, without discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex. Do we say that this office is open only for men and not women? Only for upper caste and not for the so-called lower castes or scheduled castes? Is this office open only for one religion and not others? That's not the case. So republic is our principle. Socialist is our principle. Secularism is our principle, enshrined in the Constitution. What sort of government do we have to put in place? Do we have a presidential form of government or a parliamentary form of government? A presidential form of government, for example, seen in the United States, where President of the United States, he controls all the powers. Or a parliamentary form of government, for example, in Britain, where the power is with Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. And this Prime Minister is accountable to the Parliament, responsible to the Parliament. In US, the President is not accountable to the Parliament in that sense. What are the principles of the state? What are the structures and processes of the government that we have to follow? What are the rights that are available to the people, which cannot be unilaterally changed by an ordinary legislative act? We have fundamental rights, which we will discuss later. One such right is freedom of speech and expression. Clear? Is our freedom of speech and expression an absolute fundamental right? No. When we say absolute fundamental right, in the sense, if the Constitution tells me you have the freedom of speech and expression, which means say whatever you want to say, express whatever you want to express, do whatever you want to do, can this fundamental right, or is this fundamental right unregulated, in a sense absolute, that you can say whatever you want to say? No, there are what we call reasonable restrictions. What are these reasonable restrictions? For example, say whatever you want to say, but don't incite people to violence. I have the freedom of speech and expression. I'm saying all the students who are attending this class right now, please take up AK-47 and let's overthrow this government in Delhi. I will be arrested. Because although I have the freedom of speech and expression, but that does not mean it is absolute. I can say whatever I have to say. I can't incite people to violence. Similarly, I can't violate public order. Public order in the sense, all of us, I take you to a multiplex, we will watch a movie. And now there's a beautiful song being displayed on the movies, on the television screen, on the screen, multiplex screen. And suddenly I cry, fire, fire, fire. What will you do? You will all run. There will be stampede. People will die. People will be injured. And I'm sitting calmly on my chair and eating popcorn, drinking an overvalued Pepsi. The police will come. Gentlemen, let me take you to a jail. I said, why? Because you just organized a riot. It was stampede. 50 people unfortunately died. 100 of them have been injured. But what did I do? You said fire, 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 but there was no fire. Yeah, so what? But why did you say this? Freedom of speech and expression. I can say whatever I want to say. I can express whatever I want to express. But that is not the case, because your freedom of speech and expression is not an absolute fundamental right, because you have to have responsibility while exercising it. You can't incite people to violence. You can't violate public order. And there are in total 8 reasonable restrictions imposed in the Constitution. So if there are 8 reasonable restrictions, and now can I impose 9th one? There are 8 reasonable restrictions imposed on your freedom of speech and expression. Can I impose a 9th reasonable restriction? Can I do that? No, maybe yes, I can. But cannot be through an ordinary legislative act. Ordinary legislative act in the sense, listen to me carefully. This is an ordinary law. And this is a constitutional amendment. Ordinary law requires simple majority, which I will explain either today or tomorrow first. Simple majority means if there are 500 people sitting in the parliament, out of 500 people, whether this bill will be passed or not, it depends upon whether more than half of the members present and voting, whether they will approve it or not. So if 500 are present, but 100 people abstain. Abstain in the sense there are 500 people in the parliament. Now we have to look at whether this X bill will be passed or not. 100 MPs are sleeping. They don't know what's happening. Sleeping in the sense they don't want to either vote in favor or they want to vote against this bill. Why? Because of various reasons. If they vote in favor of this bill, these MPs may be viewed that you're closer to the BJP. Maybe you fear ED, CBI and others. If you vote against this bill, you are giving a sense that you're close to Congress. And you don't want your constituency people, you don't want your support base to get this idea that you're either in favor or against BJP or Congress. You want to remain equidistant from both the political parties. And for that, you decide to abstain. I will be present in the parliament, but I will not vote, neither in favor nor against. This bill will be passed if it gets 201 votes, more than 201. It's more than half of the members present and voting, simple majority. The bill is passed. But if it's a constitutional amendment, this constitutional amendment requires 2/3 majority, plus absolute majority, plus sometimes needs a ratification by states as well. And I will explain this slightly later in great detail, but here just keep in mind, I just want to make you understand that there are some things which are very difficult. A constitutional amendment act requires 2/3 majority in the parliament. In the sense, 2/3 of the members present and voting, they have to vote in favor. And this 2/3 members should also be more than half of the total membership of the House. And if it affects federal features, then you require ratification by half of the states as well. Don't understand this right now. I'm just giving out details. You don't need to understand this. Just understand the concept that it is difficult. If you want to change these rights that are provided to you by the Constitution, if you want to alter them, you can't alter them through an ordinary legislative act. You can alter these rights through a constitutional amendment, which is very difficult. And this higher law, as I told you, is referred to as a constitution. That is why I told you constitution is the supreme law of land, which enjoys special legal sanctity. Let's recap. First, we discussed what is this online classroom program. Then I told you what is the significance of Indian polity. Then I told you what are the sources that you need to follow to master Indian polity. And basically, you will have to attend my classes regularly, make notes of whatever I'm teaching, plus revise from Lakshmikant, plus take care of current affairs, problem solved. You won't face any difficulty whatsoever. But then what exactly do we need to study? We need to study the Constitution, we need to study the laws passed by the Parliament, various judicial verdicts. If that is what we need to study, but then what exactly is the Constitution? Because we have to start with Constitution, we have to start with basics. The definition is, the vast majority of contemporary constitutions describe the basic principles of the state, the structures and processes of government and the fundamental rights of citizens in a higher law, which is the Constitution, that cannot be unilaterally changed by the ordinary legislative act. So Constitution is a supreme law of land which enjoys special legal sanctity. Constitution is a document of people's faith and aspirations. Constitution is a document which allocates areas of influence and roles and responsibilities to various different organs of the state. This is what a Constitution is. If this much is clear, raise your hands. Others also raise your hands. It won't take much time. Little more. Up, up, up. More. Okay, stop. We discuss now various types of the Constitution. These types won't be asked in the exam, but just to understand the basics, I'll tell you what is a written and unwritten Constitution. But then we will focus more on whether a Constitution is unitary or the Constitution is federal. Once we discuss that, I will give you a break possibly, if you need a break of let's say 15 minutes. I'll also grab a cup of coffee, and then we will continue the remaining discussion. And we will end the class at 9 o'clock. And then we will meet again tomorrow, 6 o'clock in the morning. Clear? Whoever is sleepy, you can grab a cup of coffee right now. Okay. Constitution can be written or Constitution can be unwritten. What do we mean by written Constitution? Laws are written and codified into a single document. What is an unwritten Constitution? Not all laws are written. And basically, it is an uncodified Constitution. So what's the difference? Example is Constitution of United States of America, Constitution of India, Constitution of various other countries, Australia, Canada, so on and so forth. Here the example is UK, the example is New Zealand, so on and so forth. But what is a written Constitution? A written Constitution means, if you were to ask me, sir, show me the Constitution of United States of America, I will give you a small pamphlet and tell you this is the Constitution of United States. Sir, show me the Constitution of India. I will give you a bulky book and tell you this is the Constitution of India, but please treat it with respect. But that means laws are written, but they are codified into one single document. Document in the sense, Part 1 talks about union and its territory. Part 2 talks about citizenship. Part 3 talks about fundamental rights. Part 4 talks about directive principles of state policy. Part 4, capital A, talks about fundamental duties. Then union executive, legislature, union territory, so on and so forth. That means laws are written and they are codified into one single document. This is a written Constitution. Similarly, in the United States of America, laws are written and codified into one small booklet. That's the Constitution of the United States. But sir, can you show me the Constitution of the United Kingdom? I can't. Why? Because these laws are not written and codified into one single document so that I can tell you this Constitution. But sir, why is that the case? Are these people, these English people who claim that they are the civilized lot of the world, that it is a burden on them to civilize the uncivilized people, are these people lazy that they did not write all these laws into one single document? Perhaps yes. Or their governance has functioned like this for centuries and they never felt the need that now we need to codify all these laws into one single document. Tomorrow if they feel the need, maybe they will codify all these laws into one single document and say this is our Constitution. But they have never felt the need. That's the difference. But sir, what else is the difference? What else is the difference? In a written Constitution, we say Constitution is supreme. And in an unwritten Constitution, we say Parliament is sovereign. Listen to me carefully. Can Parliament in India or US Congress, that's not Rahul Gandhi's Congress, US Congress means US Parliament, which is bicameral. There are two houses of US Congress. One is the House of Representatives, lower house, the House of Senate, which is the upper house. Can US Congress, which is US Parliament, can Indian Parliament violate the Constitution? No. Pass a law which violates the Constitution? No. Pass a law which goes against the spirit of the Constitution? No. That means in a written Constitution, which is supreme Constitution, not the Parliament, not the legislature, not the executive, not the judiciary, no other entities, the Constitution which is supreme. But in UK, where they have an unwritten Constitution, where the Constitution is not written, how can it be supreme? It is the Parliament which is sovereign. And when we say when Parliament is sovereign, we come across the statement given by a constitutional expert, D. Lord May, who said British Parliament can do anything except convert a man into a woman and a woman into a man. Can British Parliament change the rights that are available to the British citizens? Yes. Can they alter it? Yes. Can they do anything that they want to do? Yes. Everything that they can do. British Parliament is sovereign. It has ultimate power to do anything that it wants to do. And that's what D. Lord May said. British Parliament can do anything except convert a man into a woman and a woman into a man. That's the only limitation. Otherwise, it can do anything. For example, fixed Parliament law of 2011. Listen to me carefully. And in India, we have Lok Sabha. And in Britain, we have House of Commons. Those who may have listened to my word bicameral and would not have understood this or did not ask this question because I said don't ask me any question. Bicameral means two houses. Is Indian Parliament bicameral? Yes. Because we have lower house known as Lok Sabha the upper house, Rajya Sabha. So any legislature which has two houses, we call it bicameral. Bi means two. Just like US Congress, House of Representatives, Senate, just like British Parliament, they have House of Commons. And what is the upper house? House of Lords. And a parliament which is consisting of only one house, we call it unicameral. For example, in India, there are states such as Andhra, Telangana, Maharashtra, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, where we have bicameral legislatures, where there are two houses, Legislative Assembly and Legislative Council. In all other states, we have a unicameral legislature, where there is only Legislative Assembly, there is no Legislative Council. Why is that the case? We'll discuss later, but this is to tell you this is a unicameral legislature, this is a bicameral legislature. And what are we discussing? Constitution is written, Constitution is unwritten. Written Constitution means all laws are codified into one single document. That doesn't mean in unwritten Constitution laws are not written. Laws are written, but not all laws are written, and we'll tell you why. Not all laws are written, and even those laws which are written, they're not codified into one single document. Why? Because they never felt the need. Why? Because there was no such thing as a revolution where people explicitly asked for democracy, asked for constitution in Britain. Although they did ask for the Queen, the King to give up their powers to the Parliament, but no other revolution per se. And we say in a written constitution, it is the constitution which is supreme. And in an unwritten constitution, we say Parliament is sovereign. British Parliament can do anything. For example, in 2011, British Parliament passed a law called as Fixed Term Parliament Act. Fixed Term Parliament Act in the sense that the term of House of Commons is 5 years, fixed. The term is 5 years, it's fixed. Can we dissolve this House of Commons even before 5 years? Yes. How? But then there are two conditions. Condition number one, if 2/3 members pass a resolution, then there can be fresh elections. Or condition number two, if the new government fails to prove majority. In Britain, they had passed a law, the Parliament had passed a law in 2011 called Fixed Term Parliament Act, which means the term of the House of Commons is fixed at 5 years, so that we can give stability to the government. Because otherwise, the term is, at any point in time, the Prime Minister can ask the Queen, please dissolve House of Commons, I want to go for fresh elections. That's what Indira Gandhi did in 1970. She asked the advice of the President, please dissolve Lok Sabha so that we can have fresh elections, so that I can win with a bigger majority. Mr. KCR, in 2018, the elections were supposed to be held in 2019 in Telangana. But Mr. KCR anticipated, if I push this, if the election is conducted in 2019, maybe people not vote for me. Maybe if the election is conducted simultaneously in 2019 for Lok Sabha as well as Legislative Assembly, people will vote for for national political party, not for me. He called the President, dear President, please dissolve Legislative Assembly. And he called the governor, advised the governor, please dissolve Legislative Assembly. Legislative Assembly was dissolved and fresh election was conducted. In Britain, the law was passed that the term of the House of Commons is fixed at 5 years. But even before 5 years, it can be dissolved, but not like previously, when the Prime Minister will dial the Queen and say, please dissolve House of Commons. Not like that. It can be dissolved, fresh elections can be held only if one of these two conditions are satisfied. 2/3 members of House of Commons say we need fresh election. At least majority are in favor of fresh election. It's all about democracy. Democracy is all about numbers. Numbers is all about majority. Or if, for example, Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister, but now he does not have the majority in House of Commons, he's removed. Then I will become the Prime Minister of Britain. Clear? That means House of Commons is same. Members are same. Fresh election has not been conducted. But from this House of Commons, one person like me becomes the Prime Minister. But now I have to prove my majority in House of Commons. If the majority of members in House of Commons don't support me, that means I cannot continue as the Prime Minister. In this case, fresh election will be conducted. That is why Rishi Sunak, before him, multiple Prime Ministers, House of Commons was not dissolved. From the same House of Commons, we had the Prime Ministers, because the term is fixed. Term is fixed for 5 years. Or term was fixed for 5 years. But a couple of years ago, this law was repealed. And who repealed this law? Parliament. How? By a simple majority. If the term of Lok Sabha is 5 years in India, and if we need to fix this term for 5 years, for that we require a constitutional amendment. That's the difference between an unwritten constitution and a written constitution. Because in an unwritten or a written constitution, there is no distinction between an ordinary law and a constitutional amendment. So in India, because it is a written constitution, if we have to amend the constitution, we require special majority. If we have to amend ordinary laws, we require simple majority. That means clear cut, there is a distinction. Ordinary laws require simple majority. Constitutional changes require constitutional amendments, special majority. But that is not the case in an unwritten constitution in Britain. Because in Britain, there is no distinction between an ordinary law and a constitutional law. Both require same type of majority to change. And in an unwritten constitution, conventions play a very important role. What is a convention? Unwritten rule. Perhaps that is why we call the British Parliament an unwritten constitution, because there are some unwritten rules that are also to be followed. Unwritten rules in the sense, in a family, there is a dining table. It's a 6-seater, for example, and then here is a bigger chair. A chair which is centrally located. The head of the family sits on this chair. Clear? And no matter how big the family is, whenever you come, nobody can sit on this chair. You have to be seated somewhere else, but not on this chair, because it is reserved for the head of the family. Is it mentioned in the constitution of that family? No. Is it mentioned in any rule book of that family? No. It's an unwritten rule that we follow. Similarly, there are some unwritten rules that are followed in Britain, not mentioned anywhere in the constitution, but they follow it. For example, Lok Sabha in India can be dissolved by whom? Who can dissolve Lok Sabha in India? That power is given to the president. But president can dissolve Lok Sabha only on the advice of the Prime Minister. Where is it mentioned? Constitution. In United Kingdom, House of Commons can be dissolved by the Queen but only on the advice of the Prime Minister. It is not mentioned anywhere. But the convention is that it will be dissolved by the Queen only on the advice of the Prime Minister. It's a convention, unwritten rule. In India, when a bill is passed by the Parliament, sent to the President, or when a bill is passed by the state legislature, sent to the governor, what are the options available with the governor? If it is the governor of Uttar Pradesh and a bill is passed by the Uttar Pradesh Legislative Assembly, the governor of Uttar Pradesh, Anandiben Patel, she would blindly give her assent, sign this bill, and bill becomes a law because it's Yogi Ji's bill. But if the same bill is passed by the Kerala Legislative Assembly, it is sent to Arif Muhammad Khan, he would say, I will not sign this bill. I will keep this bill pending. I will think about this bill. I will send this bill to President for his consideration. I won't do this. I won't do that. No, he's weeping, sulking. Be that as it may. But that is mentioned in the Constitution because these are the options available to the governor. Either you can sign this bill, or you may withhold your assent, or you may send the bill back, or you may reserve it for the President. It's mentioned. But in Britain, whenever a law is passed by the British Parliament and it is sent to the Queen or King for assent, King has to sign. And King does. Is it mentioned anywhere in the law? No. Then what is it? It is part of the convention. And in fact, the last time a veto was used in England was by Queen Anne. After that, they've never vetoed because the convention is now, whenever the bill is presented to us, who are we? I may be king, I may be queen, but I'm a nominal head. The real power is with the elected individual who is the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. So whatever they tell me, I have to follow that and I will sign this bill. So in an unwritten constitution, conventions play a wider, much important role. So what is the difference between a written and an unwritten constitution? Because I told you what a constitution is. Now another basic, some constitutions are written, some are unwritten. Written constitution means that all laws are written and codified into one single document. Unwritten constitution means laws are written, but not all laws are written because there are conventions as well. And they're not codified into one single document. So Britain, if they have to codify this document, all laws that they have passed, all conventions, they will have to write again. Commentaries also of various constitutional experts. For example, what A.V. Dicey has written, that is also treated as part of the Constitution. That is also treated in Britain as sanctity, as legal, as the Constitution. So in a written constitution, laws are written, codified into one single document. In an unwritten constitution, not all laws are written because there are conventions and they're not codified into one single document. Why? Because they never feel the need. If they feel the need tomorrow, maybe they will codify the Constitution, codify all the written laws into one single document. But the most important thing is, in a written constitution, constitution is supreme. But in an unwritten constitution, it is Parliament which is sovereign. Parliament can do anything. For example, fixed term Parliament Act. This can be introduced, passed, repealed by the same process, ordinary law. But in India, if we have to amend the constitution, a tougher majority is required. If we have to change the ordinary laws, a lower majority, simpler majority is required. That is not the case in Britain, because in Britain there is no distinction between an ordinary law and a constitutional amendment. That is what is a written and an unwritten constitution. But whatever we have discussed till now, these are just concepts so that you get the flavor of a constitution, you get the flavor of the polity. But the real discussion starts now, when we will look at what is a unitary constitution and what is a federal constitution. And is India a unitary or a federal polity? Is US a unitary or a federal polity? And what is better, unitary or federal? That we will discuss at 7:45 a.m. For the next 5 minutes till 7:30, I will take your questions so that I can answer all your questions. Then we will take a break of 15 minutes. We will come back at 7:15 and we will discuss unitary and federal. Because if I initiate the discussion now, I cannot stop because this has to be done in continuity. Okay? Questions, please. So then in states with unwritten constitution, what is the doubt? Okay. So then in states with unwritten constitution, does it also mean that there is lesser scope for judicial interpretation because the laws are conventional in nature and not codified? That is why we say in unwritten constitutions, such as Britain, judiciary has a less important role to play. Judiciary cannot strike down the law passed by the parliament. It can, but under very extreme circumstances. In fact, judiciary in Britain can protect you against executive. If the executive has violated your laws, executive has violated your rights. But the judiciary is helpless, hapless against the legislature. Because who is sovereign in Britain? Parliament. There are no guaranteed fundamental rights in unwritten constitution. There are fundamental rights provided, but we can say that the nature of fundamental rights is negative. Negative in the sense, do whatever you want to do, except with what is explicitly prohibited by law. In a sense, in India, we have the list of fundamental rights. Only these are fundamental rights, right? In Britain, everything is a fundamental right, except don't do those things which the law says you can't do. For example, law says you can't murder. The right to commit murder is not your fundamental right. The law says that you cannot instigate people to violence. That will not be your fundamental right. Apart from those restrictions, whatever else you want to do, that's your fundamental right. But these fundamental rights can be changed, altered, snatched at any time by the parliament because parliament is sovereign. So where are the 8 reasonable restrictions and where is it mentioned? All these 8 reasonable restrictions are mentioned in the Constitution. For example, 19(1)(a) talks about freedom of speech and expression. Article 19(1)(a) talks about freedom of speech and expression. Article 19 clause 2 says this freedom of speech and expression is restricted on these 8 grounds. Do we also need to refer the book provided by Unacademy? There is no need. If you just follow what I told you, that much is enough. So let's assume a situation in which we have government of BJP in almost all the states and at center in majority, then passed a law which will have a potential to violate DOBS means doctrine of basic structure. Even if you do it, but then the matter will reach the court. And the final interpreter of the constitution is the judiciary. And judiciary will strike down this law for violating basic structure. That's what we will discuss. We'll discuss the concept called doctrine of checks and balances today. Okay, it's 7:30. I'll see you in 15 minutes. See you at 7:45. Don't go away. Even if you go, come back. Bye-bye. Shall we start? If I'm audible, visible, please raise your hands. Keep on raising your hands. Let me see. Up, up. Continue. Sound is clear? Okay. Constitution, what it is, we discussed. What is a written and unwritten constitution? That's also something that we have discussed. Now let's look at whether a constitution is unitary or it is federal, and whether Indian constitution is federal or unitary. Let's have a discussion on this. Let's first understand what is a unitary constitution. For example, there's a country, and this country is big enough in terms of geography, in terms of area, in terms of size, population. Can we control this entire country from one center? If yes, then we call such a country as a unitary polity, or it has a constitution which is unitary in nature. Let's say, for example, South Africa, France, Britain, these are the examples of unitary constitution. And in unitary constitution, we come across a term, a phrase, a concept known as delegation of powers. What do we mean by delegation of powers? Listen to me carefully. For example, you and me and all of us, we are here. And I tell you that it is my responsibility to set this class, to ensure that this mic is working, to ensure that the camera is in place, to ensure that the PPT has been uploaded, to ensure that the lights are working, the AC is working, everything is sorted. That's my responsibility. That is within my reach. Clear? But I tell you that I may be late sometimes. Late in the sense, I will never be late, hopefully. But let's say one individual, your responsibility would be to ensure that the mic is working. Your responsibility would be to ensure that the camera is in place. Another person's responsibility is to ensure that the lights are turned on. Another person's responsibility is to ensure that from the back end, we are seeing that the class is working fine. There are no issues being faced by the students. And someone else has the responsibility to ensure that the AC is working, so that I can just walk into this room and I start delivering the class. Although all these were my responsibilities, but I'm delegating these powers, delegating these responsibilities. Delegation in the sense, today it is your responsibility. But ultimate control is with me, because I am appointing you to set this mic. And tomorrow, I will snatch this responsibility from you and I will give it to another individual. Or day after tomorrow, I will say, forget about all of you. I don't need you. I will do all these works together. I will ensure that the class runs on time. That means in delegation of powers, what happens? Delegation can be temporary. Temporary in the sense, I will give you this responsibility and I will snatch this responsibility as well. Are concentrated in one strong center. All powers are concentrated in one strong center. That means there exists a central authority making laws for the entire country, implementing laws for the entire country. Everything is the responsibility of this strong center. But that doesn't mean that they may. But these local governments are created. These local governments are abolished by the center at any point in time. What is the responsibility of these local governments or local authorities? That will be determined by the center. That means some powers are delegated, but at any point in time, these powers can be snatched as well. Sir, I did not understand. Let me give you another example. We are in India. Clear? We have a government in Delhi. We have the parliament in Delhi. The parliament makes laws for the entire country. Mr. Modi and his government, it runs the policies for the entire country, creating various schemes, implementing them, implementing foreign policy. What should be our relationship with China? What should be our relationship with Pakistan? What should be our relationship with the United States? What should be our position on the Ukraine-Russia war? What should be our position on the Israel-Hamas war? Everything is determined by the center. But we have Mamta Didi as well. We have Mr. Yogi as well. We have Mr. Stalin as well. Clear? We have Mr. Naveen Patnaik as well. Imagine a situation where there are no state governments in India, where there is no Karnataka Legislative Assembly, there is no Manipur Legislative Assembly, there is no Punjab Legislative Assembly. All the laws for the entire country are passed by the parliament. And there is no Bhagwant Mann, there is no Mamta Didi, there is no Naveen Patnaik, there is only Modi ji. Such a situation where all the powers are concentrated in one strong center and the center governs the entire country, that is what we call a unitary constitution. Or it may be that Mr. Modi would now feel that I cannot govern this entire country from Delhi because geographically it is very vast. So I need a Nitish Kumar. I need a Mamta Didi. I need Mr. Stalin. But what will be your responsibility? I will tell you. I'm the center. So today I will tell you, law and order will be your responsibility. Ensure that in your respective states, law and order is maintained. That will be your responsibility. But tomorrow, I will snatch this responsibility. I will say, law and order will now be my responsibility. You take care of agriculture. Tomorrow, I will say, I will snatch this agriculture responsibility from you as well. And now your responsibility will be the defense. For example, that means who has the ultimate control? Center. Center decides how to run the entire country. Center may create these local states, local governments. Center may abolish them as well. Center may give them some responsibility. Center may snatch these responsibilities as well. But these are delegation of power. Powers are delegated. That means ultimately, all these powers are with the center. But center says, for some time, I am delegating these powers to you. But delegation is not permanent. It's only for temporary period. It may be for 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. But at any point in time, I can snatch these powers. Any country where such system works is a unitary country, a unitary polity. The constitution is unitary. For example, South Africa, for example, France, for example, Britain. Long story short, what is a unitary constitution? A unitary constitution is one where all powers are concentrated in one strong center. Center controls the entire system of that state. Center may assign, delegate some responsibility to local units, but local units are created, abolished at the discretion of the center. Center delegates some powers, can snatch these powers as well. Long story short, all powers are concentrated in one strong center. Such an entity is a unitary center. Is that clear? But when you look at what is a federal polity or what is a federal constitution, the problem is we do not have a definition. We have a definition for a unitary polity that all powers are concentrated in one strong center. Such an entity is a unitary constitution or a unitary polity. But what is a federal polity? What is a federal constitution? We don't know. Why? Because we don't have a definition. But then, sir, how can we write in the examination? You said you will teach us everything related to the exam. Now you are saying I can't give you even a definition. Hold your horses. What do constitutional experts then do? They look at the US Constitution. US Constitution is like the benchmark. And this US Constitution we have to examine. If we have to decide whether Indian or a Canadian or an Australian or a Swiss constitution is unitary or federal, we have to compare these constitutions with the Constitution of the United States, which is considered to be the oldest federal constitution of the world. If it matches US constitution, it is federal. If it doesn't, then it is something else. So, sir, what is a federal constitution? A federal constitution is one, a federal polity is one, which mirrors the oldest federal constitution of the world, which is the United States Constitution. If it matches US constitution, it is federal. If it doesn't, it is something else. But, sir, what are these characteristics of US constitution which make it federal? What are the important characteristics of US constitution because of which we say that US is a federal constitution? 5 characteristics. Which are these 5 characteristics? Characteristic number 1, dual government. Characteristic number 2, distribution of powers. Characteristic number 3, a written constitution. Characteristic number 4, a rigid constitution. Characteristic number 5, independent judiciary. So what does that mean? There are 5 characteristics which differentiate US constitution from others. And these 5 characteristics make US constitution a federal constitution, which makes US polity a federal polity. What are these characteristics? Number 1, dual government. What do we mean by dual government? There is one government at the center headed by Joe Biden, and in some months would be headed by the orange hair Donald J. Trump, in all likelihood. But there is government in every state as well. There are 50 states in the United States, and all these 50 states have their own governments as well. So dual government, two systems of government. One government at the center, one government in the state. That's number 1, dual government. Second, distribution of powers. Not separation of powers. That is something we will discuss separately. Distribution of powers. That means some powers are given to the center, some powers are given to the state. But it is not that center is superior to state or states are superior to center. It is this written constitution which has clearly defined the roles and responsibilities of the center and the states. It is this constitution which has created center and state. If the constitution has created center and state, that means both are powerful. Nobody is inferior, nobody is superior. And it is this constitution which has allocated roles and responsibilities to center and the states. It is this constitution which is provided for what? What are the areas which will be under the control of center? What are the areas under the control of the state? So that states cannot encroach into the domain of the center. Center cannot encroach into the domain of the state. And constitution has to be rigid. What do we mean by rigidity of the constitution? Can anybody tell me? What is rigidity in a constitution? What is a rigid constitution? Pinky says can't be amended. Venkat Desai says don't change easily, not amended easily, no amendments, not easily amended, cannot be easily amended. No. Rigidity does not mean that you can't amend the constitution. If that was the case, there have been 27 amendments to US constitution. Rigidity also does not mean that it is very difficult to amend the constitution. Although technically yes, but that is not the prime reason. Rigidity means if at all you have to amend the constitution, it has to be joint act of both center and states. Can center unilaterally change the constitution? No. Can states unilaterally on their own change the constitution? No. If at all you need to change the constitution, then center and state, they have to come together to amend the constitution. Because imagine, we have dual government, we have distribution of powers, and all these are mentioned in the constitution. But what if center unilaterally changes this constitution and says there is no dual government? Then we will go back to unitary constitution. If the center unilaterally changes this constitution and say these powers are not given to you, these powers we are snatching it back, then it is as good as a unitary constitution. So rigidity of the constitution means if at all you need to make any changes to the constitution, if at all you want to amend the constitution, it has to be joint act of both center as well as states. Both have to agree that these are the things that we need to change in the constitution. If one says no, the other cannot force its view. And if at all there is a dispute, Joe Biden says this is not the power of Chicago. Chicago says, Joe Biden, maybe you're not in your senses. That is why there are memes and reels about you that you forgot things and you forget things easily. And you are handshaking an imaginary person. There's no person on the other side. Maybe you're not suitable. In fact, there was also a committee which asked Joe Biden, when did your son die? The committee says he could not answer. Then Joe Biden says, I did not need to answer that question because how dare they ask me this question? It is so emotional to me. But be that as it may, what if there is a dispute? Where do we go? We go to the judiciary. But this judiciary has to be independent. What do we mean by independent judiciary? This judiciary should not be under the control of center. If it is under the control of the center, whatever Joe Biden tells judiciary to do, it does it. States would be at a disadvantage. States' rights would be violated. The constitutional position of the states would be violated. And if this judiciary is under the grip, under the control of the states, center would be at a disadvantage. So this judiciary has to be independent. It need not be under the control of either center or the state. It has to be independent in its functioning. It will interpret the constitution the way it is, without being biased in favor of the center, without being biased against the state. That's how an independent judiciary should function. And any constitution of the world, if it matches these criteria, if it is also dealing with such characteristics, if it also contains these characteristics, it is a federal constitution. Otherwise, it is something else. It is not federal. Long story short, we have types of constitution. One is written, another is unwritten. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Then we have either unitary or federal. This is the most important classification. And if you have understood this, you have understood half of Indian polity. What is a unitary constitution? All the powers are concentrated with center. Either center controls the entire country, or center creates states, local units, and delegates some powers to them. That means these powers are with the center, but these powers are delegated to the states. But at any point in time, these local units can also be dissolved by the center. At any point in time, these powers can also be snatched from these states. So all these local governments exist at the mercy of the center, because all powers are with the center. Such a setup is a unitary setup. But what is a federal polity? What is a federal constitution? We don't know. Why? Because there is no definition. Then how can we say whether a constitution is federal or unitary? We compare it with the US Constitution, which is oldest federal constitution of the world. If it matches the US Constitution, it is federal. If it doesn't, then it is something else. But what are the characteristics of US Constitution which make it federal in the first place? One, dual government. One government at the center, one government in the state. distribution of power, not delegation. Delegation is done by a superior authority to an inferior authority. Delegation is done where powers are given to this inferior authority, but then these powers can be snatched back as well, taken back as well. But that is not distribution of powers. In distribution of powers, Constitution distributes that these are the powers with the center, these are the powers with the states, and center cannot interfere, states cannot interfere in their respective domains. And Constitution has to be written, because if it is not written, if it is based on convention, there is a lot of debate, discussion, doubts, confusion, so on and so forth. Constitution has to be written. Written Constitution is what makes a constitution federal, in all likelihood. But then this Constitution has to be rigid as well. Rigid in the sense, rigidity does not mean that you can't amend the Constitution. Rigidity does not mean that it is very difficult to change the Constitution. Rigidity in a federal polity means, if at all you need to change the Constitution, it has to be joint act of both center as well as states. Both center as well as states, they will have to come together to amend the Constitution. And any dispute, it has to go to the courts have to be independent. Any constitution, any country, any polity, if it matches US, it's a federal polity, otherwise it is something else. Can you tell me, sir, what about India? Is India unitary or federal? Don't tell me quasi-federal or anything of that sort. Just answer this question. Is India unitary or federal? Let's test whether these characteristics are maintained or not. Do we have a dual government? Yes, there is one government at the center. There is government in all the states as well. All the 28 states. So characteristic number 1 satisfied? Yes. Do we have distribution of powers? Yes. How? There is something called Schedule 7 of the Constitution, which we will discuss in center-state relations in great detail. This Schedule 7 talks about union list. It talks about state list. It talks about concurrent list. For example, in state list, union list, we have defense, external affairs, banking, insurance, citizenship, so on and so forth. In state list, we have law and order. We have agriculture. We have gambling. We have police, so on and so forth. In concurrent list, we have marriage and divorce, criminal procedure, civil procedure. Clear-cut distribution of powers. Who decides this? Constitution. Constitution allocates powers to the center and the states. Center, you take care of 97 items. Defense, external affairs, communication, banking, insurance, citizenship, extradition, so on and so forth. These 97 items are given to you. States, come here. You have these 61 subjects. You take care of them. Law and order, agriculture, police, gambling, so on and so forth. But then there are some items which are kept in concurrent list, where both center as well as states will have the power to make laws. For example, related to education, related to marriage, related to divorce, criminal procedure, civil procedure, so on and so forth. So do we have distribution of powers? We have. Is our constitution written? Yes, it is. In fact, the longest written, lengthiest constitution of the world. Do we have a rigid constitution? And what is rigidity of the constitution? That if you need to change the constitution, it has to be joint act of both center as well as states. The year was 2017. GST was implemented. Goods and Services Tax. Do you know how this GST was implemented? First, a constitutional amendment bill was passed in both houses of Indian Parliament. But before it could be sent to President for a signature, this GST was sent to all the state legislatures in India. Only when more than half of the state legislatures accepted GST, then GST was implemented. Because GST was a constitutional amendment. So to amend the constitution, you need a joint act of both center as well as states. That means India is a federal polity. When in 2014, NJAC was implemented, or NJAC was passed, although it could not be implemented later, we will discuss why. When NJAC was passed by both houses of Indian Parliament. What is NJAC? National Judicial Appointments Commission, which was meant to replace the collegium system, because today collegium system is used to appoint judges to the Supreme Court and High Courts, which we will discuss later. But in 2014, Parliament passed a bill, NJAC, to replace collegium. But when this NJAC was passed by both houses of Indian Parliament, it was not sent to President for signature. It was sent to all the state legislatures. And only when half of the state legislatures accepted NJAC, then it was sent to the President for signature. And that's how NJAC became a law. Because NJAC was a constitutional amendment. When we say rigidity, it means if you need to amend the constitution, it has to be the joint act of both center as well as state. And we have that. And do we have an independent judiciary? Yes, we have. Just ask anybody on the street, do we have an independent judiciary? They would say yes. But that is only on paper. As we dig deeper, dual government. At any point in time, Mamta Didi can be dismissed. President's rule can be imposed under Article 356 of the Constitution. What is the president's rule? We will discuss in emergency provisions in great detail, but very briefly here. If we have Mamta Banerjee as the Chief Minister of Bengal, which is dual government, one government at the center, one government in Bengal, at any point in time, if the central government wants, President will dismiss Mamta Banerjee and West Bengal will be governed directly from the center. So do we have a dual government? On paper, yes, but something else. At any point in time, this state government can be dismissed. But that is what, sir, you discussed in unitary constitution. That in unitary constitution, there are local governments, but they can be created, they can be abolished by the center. Here, West Bengal government is abolished by the center and center controls that state. So how do we say that we follow dual government? I don't know. Okay, let's look at the second point. At least we have distribution of powers between union list, state list, concurrent list. So, sir, what is your problem with that? We follow distribution of powers. My dear, my problem is that Constitution says in normal circumstances. So, what is this normal circumstances? If we have distribution of powers, can at any point in time state legislature pass a law on defense? Never. Can state legislature pass a law on external affairs? Never. Can state legislature pass a law on banking, insurance, citizenship, extradition? Never. Can state legislature enact a law on law and order, agriculture, gambling, police? Yes, but only in normal circumstances. And what are these abnormal circumstances? Things such as Article 352, Article 356, Article 360, and various other articles, which we will discuss in great detail later on in center-state relations. If national emergency is imposed in a state or in the entire country, Parliament makes a law even on state list. If president's rule is imposed in a state, Parliament makes a law on state list. If financial emergency is imposed, every single state may have to also reserve their budget for president. That means even in financial matters, they will not have any say. So on dual government, there is something dicey. We follow dual government, but then we don't follow dual government. In distribution of powers, we follow it, but then we don't follow it. But at least our constitution is written. So the constitution is written. But were states consulted in drafting this constitution? Were states responsible for enacting this constitution? No. But at least, sir, even if this constitution is there, but it is rigid. Because you told us that when NJAC was passed, when GST was passed, you needed ratification by half of the states. But that is only if it affects federal features. Constitution says, if a constitutional amendment bill is to be passed, which affects federal features, only then you need ratification by half of the states. Otherwise, you don't. Which means 90% of the constitution can be and is unilaterally changed, amended by the central parliament. States are not consulted. In fact, states cannot even introduce a constitutional amendment bill. In fact, states cannot even propose a constitutional amendment bill. That means 90% of the constitution can be altered unilaterally by the parliament, which is the central legislature. Where are the states? But sir, whatever you say, dual government, followed, not followed. Distribution of powers, followed, unfollowed. Written constitution, the rigidity of the constitution, followed, unfollowed. But at least, sir, we have the independent judiciary. If we have independent judiciary, who appoints judges? And who removes judges? Who appoints judges? President. And president is part of center. Who removes judges? President. Based on the recommendation of parliament. So central government appointing judges. Central legislature recommending removal of the judges. If center is only involved, don't you think these judges will be biased in favor of center? Because after all, they are appointed by them, they can be removed by them. By that logic, if 5 characteristics which make US constitution a federal constitution are to be looked at in India, on paper we see that we satisfy all these characteristics. But as we go deeper, as we dig deeper, all these characteristics are also violated. Dual government, distribution of powers, written constitution, rigid constitution, independent of judiciary. Then are we a federal constitution or are we a unitary constitution? Or are we something that we don't know who we are? Or is it that India, just like India, is unique? Or Indian constitution, just like India, is unique? And that is why there are constitutional experts who say that Indian constitution is quasi-federal. Neither completely unitary, nor completely federal. Or some say Indian constitution is federal, but with a strong unitary bias. Or some say Indian constitution is unitary with few federal characteristics. An Indian constitution is unique, just like India, and you will not find such a constitution anywhere in the world. How? In normal circumstances, our constitution behaves as if it is a purely federal constitution. When we say dual government, it is followed and unfollowed. How many times have you witnessed that a state government has been dismissed? It used to happen a lot till 1994. After that, it's very rare. And even when it is done constitutionally. If in a particular state, constitution is violated, should the center sit mute and not act against that state? Center then intervenes, dismisses that state government, but it is only for temporary period. Because very soon, fresh election will be conducted in that state, so that dual government is restored. Because it is the duty of the center to ensure that constitution is upheld everywhere in India. So it is not that dual government is altered at the drop of a hat, where Modi ji just gets up in the morning and decides that I saw in my dream there should be no Didi, you're gone. It doesn't happen like that. It happens only if there's a grave constitutional crisis in a state. Distribution of powers, yes, in normal circumstances. But imagine a situation. Imagine this situation, where there's a war by China against India, where there's a war by Pakistan against India. Should we cry about federalism, or should we save the country first? Should we cry about distribution of powers, or keep the sovereignty, integrity, and unity of India intact? For that, who has the army? Center. Who has the navy? Who has the air force? Don't you think that our entire energy should be channelized to ensure that the country remains united and the country's sovereignty is kept intact? Or should we say that Punjab, since law and order is under your domain, you deal with Pakistan? We can't say that, because we need to bring an army, and center will control it. Even the law and order in Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Jammu and Kashmir, and other border areas. But that is only during war. That is during external aggression. That is during armed rebellion. But not in normal circumstances. In normal circumstances, we behave as if we are a purely federal constitution. There is no threat to dual government. There is no threat to the distribution of powers in normal circumstances. But sir, you are saying, what about written constitution? Were states consulted? States as entities were not consulted. But who were these representatives who were present in the Constituent Assembly? They came from states. So how can you say the states were not consulted in drafting the constitution? Or do you mean to say something like what happened in the United States? What happened in the United States? Britain was the biggest colonizer. So Africa, North America, Asia, multiple countries in these continents were under the grip of Britain, under the control of France, under the control of Dutch. You would have read that in modern history, or you will read it in the modern history. There were 13 colonies of British in North America. Just like India was a colony of British in Asia. There were 13 such colonies in North America of the British. And now these 13 British colonies, they decided enough is enough. We will revolt. And that is what led to American War of Independence. All these 13 colonies, they revolted And ultimately, they won this war for independence, known as the American War of Independence. And after they defeated Britain, these 13 colonies, which were the colonies of the Britain, now they're independent countries because they have garnered independence, they've gained independence, they defeated the British. Now these are 13 independent countries. Now these 13 independent countries, they say, why don't we come together? Why don't we come together and create United States of America? That means we were separate colonies. We were separate colonies, then we gained independence. Now we are separate countries, but now we want to come together and to create United States of America. And how do they do that? Through a treaty, through an agreement. And they signed that agreement in Philadelphia, known as the Philadelphia Convention, which is a state in the United States of America. Adopted a constitution in 1787. This constitution was enacted, entered into force in 1789. So constitution in the United States of America was possible because these 13 previous colonies of British, who are now independent and who have now decided that they want to come together to create United States of America. But how will we govern ourselves? What should be the role of these 13 states? What sort of government should we form? What should be the roles and responsibilities allocated to these states? For that, we need a document. That document became the Constitution. And that Constitution was adopted at Philadelphia in 1787. Yes, that kind of Constitution we don't have in India. That kind of agreement we don't have in India because India was already there. They had to create an entity, political entity called United States of America. Our entity was already there, India. And the members of the Constituent Assembly were taken from different parts of the country. They created this Constitution, drafted this Constitution. So do we follow dual government? Yes, we do. Do we follow distribution of powers? Yes. Do we have a written Constitution? Yes. Do we have a rigid Constitution? Yes. But only in federal matters. In all other matters, it is the center's responsibility. That is how we deviate from US Constitution. And we have an independent judiciary. Such an independent judiciary that today judges are appointed by themselves. Although formal order is issued by the president, but basically judges decide for themselves who is going to be our brother and sister judge. And such is the complicated process of removal that till date, no judge of the Supreme Court or High Court has ever been removed. Can you name one judge who was removed by Parliament? One judge of the Supreme Court or High Court who was removed by the Parliament? No. That means we follow all these characteristics. But yet we are different. Yet we are unique. Because in normal circumstances, we are a federal constitution. But whenever there is an abnormal circumstance, because of war, external aggression, armed rebellion, in that case, we become a unitary constitution. And that is only for time being. Once that war is over, we go back to federal constitution. Once that war is over, we go back to the distribution of powers. And that is why people say we are unique. Constitutional experts say we are unique. And that uniqueness is a blend of federal features and unitary features. We are quasi-federal. But some say no. We are federal, but with a strong unitary bias. Unitary bias in the sense, listen to me carefully. This I will just tell you right now. But we will explain all these provisions one by one later, because right now you may not be able to understand. But I'll just tell you what the thought process is. Can Uttar Pradesh be divided into 3 states? Can Telangana and Andhra Pradesh be merged into one state? Yes. Who has that power? That's not the power with the states. That's the power with the center. Center has been created as more powerful in India as compared to states. And that is why we say Indian constitution is federal, but with a strong unitary bias. It's biased in favor of a strong center. One such example is Article 3. Second example. In United States, you are a citizen of United States, you are a citizen of Chicago. You are a citizen of United States, you are a citizen of Florida. That means you have dual citizenship. You are a citizen of United States, you are the citizen of your own state as well. But India, we have only one citizenship. You are the citizen of India. You may be a resident of Karnataka. You may be a domicile of West Bengal, but you are the citizen of India. And who has the power to decide whether you are or you can be or you cannot be the citizen of India? That power is with the center. Not just this. All India services. How many All India services are there? Can anybody tell me? Very nice. Everybody's right. There are 3 All India services. One is IAS, the other is IPS, the other is IFOS, Indian Forest Service. Indian Foreign Service is not a All India service. Indian Foreign Service is a central service. Imagine you become an IAS officer. Who is appointing you? President. Who is recruiting you? Center. Who is training you? Center. Who can dismiss you? Center. Who can remove you? Center. Who are you accountable to? Center. But where do you work? In a state. So there are officers, and the most important officers who run the state. The DGP, the Chief Secretary, the secretaries of various state government departments. These all departments are run by IAS, IPS, Forest Service officers, All India Service officers. But these officers are controlled by the center. It's like I am sending my agent to your home. You may think that this person is working for you, helping you in your day-to-day activities, but in reality, he's working for me. And he's giving me all the details as well, how that state is functioned. Forget about All India services. What about His Excellency, Honorable Governor of a state? Appointed by the center, removed by the center, but agent of the center in the state. Forget about Governor, Election Commission of India. Do we have separate election commissions for the states? Do we have separate election commissions for the states? Yes, we have. That's called State Election Commission. But the responsibility of State Election Commission is to organize panchayat election or municipal elections. Who organizes the Legislative Assembly election? Election Commission of India. Who organizes Lok Sabha elections? Election Commission of India. Rajya Sabha elections? Election Commission of India. Central body. Appointed by President. Removed by Parliament. Forget about Election Commission. Let's look at another gentleman. CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General, who audits the accounts of the states as well. But he is appointed by the President. Can be removed, just like the judge of the Supreme Court is removed. All these things, and there are multiple other things. For example, the emergency provisions mentioned in the Constitution. All these give a clear picture that our Constitution has been created, drafted in such a manner that it creates a strong center as against a strong state. Forget about this. Let's look at what Karnataka Chief Minister, Mr. Siddaramaiah, he says, Delhi chalo. Where is our money? Karnataka after Maharashtra contributes the highest number of tax revenue. But what do we get? We get peanuts. More money you are giving to Uttar Pradesh. Give us our money back. Who decides this? Finance Commission, appointed by the center, where the states have no role. So all these tell a clear picture, give a clear picture that Indian Constitution is biased in favor of a strong center, where it has created a strong center. And these are what we call the unitary biases. Or another name for this, which may be asked in your examination, is centralizing tendency of Indian federalism. Clear? But we will not complete our discussion on unitary versus federal. We will keep this question open. We will keep this topic open. And whenever we will discuss part by part every provision of the Constitution, I will tell you that this is the provision of the Constitution which is biased in favor of center. This is the provision of the Constitution which gives weight to the argument that Indian Constitution is biased in favor of a strong center. And I will also tell you how federalism emerged in India. Federalism as a term is not mentioned in the Constitution. India as a federal polity is not mentioned in the Constitution. Federalism has emerged in India because of various accidents. And that is why we say Indian Constitution is an accidental federalism. Some accidents happened because of which federalism emerged in India. Accidents such as regional political parties emerged in India. Accidents such as 1991 reforms. Accidents such as 73rd, 74th Amendment. Various accidents. Accidents such as the judicial verdict of the court in 1994, SR Bombay versus Union of India. All these we will discuss later. But here, I just want you to understand what is a unitary and federal constitution. And in federal constitution, we don't have a definition. Then what do? We compare the constitution with the Constitution of the United States. If it matches, it is federal. If it doesn't, it is something else. On paper, Indian constitution is federal. But as we dig deeper, it is something else. That is why we say it's a mix of federal features, unitary features. So that is why we can't call it unitary. We can't call it federal. So that is why we can call it quasi-federal. Neither complete quasi-federal means neither completely federal, nor completely unitary. But since more features are federal, we say quasi-federal. If more features would have been unitary, we would have said quasi-unitary. Clear? But some say no. India is a federal polity, but with a strong unitary bias, or there is centralizing tendency in Indian federalism, where constitution creates a more powerful center. Why that was created, we'll discuss separately. And some say no, Indian constitution is unitary because all these features are unitary features. All these features are unitary. There may be few federal features in the constitution. So primarily we are a unitary constitution with few subsidiary federal features. Depending upon what sort of question is asked in the exam, we will have to write our answers accordingly, which we will discuss. So this is what is a unitary and a federal polity, federal constitution. Any questions? Let me know. Then we will discuss theory of separation of powers. Those of you who understood whatever we discussed till now, raise your hands. But please raise your hands. It's not like in a class I'm asking people, students to raise your hands. There are 10 who raise their hands, there are 20 who don't, and there are others who say simply doesn't matter. Please raise your hands if you have understood. Keep on raising your hands. Keep on. Up, above the world so high. Okay. Now let's look at theory of separation of powers. Imagine a situation. I am the teacher, and I'm teaching you right now. And once I'm teaching you, I also get to decide whether I'm teaching well or not. After that, I get to decide whether you have understood or not. So I am a teacher. After my class is over, I say, I taught brilliantly. Fantastic class. 100% students understood this. Is this right? Ideally, it should be, I am teaching, but I need your feedback. Do I teach well? Do I need to make any changes? I will still not agree with your feedback. Just say. Or I will give you a test. And how you perform in that test, that will tell me whether you have understood this or not. But if I'm the teacher, I become the student as well. I become the evaluator as well. Then it is deeply problematic. Or look at it this way. I'm making laws. I'm the king. I'm making laws. I'm saying, whoever will not pay me 99% of his income, that person is a criminal. How bad is this law? Horrible. You're earning 100 rupees and I'm telling you, give me 99 rupees back. What are you going to do with 1 rupee? But this is the law. Now I will implement this law as well. My people will go and they will start collecting 99 rupees. And what if somebody is not giving 99 rupees? Because he doesn't have any. I'm telling my people, hang him by his neck till death. I'm the judge. I'm the jury. I'm the executioner. Don't you think it will create a situation where it is a despotic government, a horrible government, a government which does not care two hoots about the people? That's what Montesquieu, a French philosopher. There are 5+ learners in the queue to talk to you. Let me see if I can get somebody to talk. First one. Rajshri. Missed the invite. Okay, so I suddenly got this prompt. I got deviated as well. I thought, what is this new feature? But be that as it may. Imagine a situation where Montesquieu, French philosopher, he said that we need to separate the 3 organs of the state. Or if there is a state, we need to separate its powers into 3. One would be the body which will be responsible for making laws, called legislature. One would be the body which would be responsible for implementing these laws, known as the executive. And the other body would be responsible to ensure that people get justice. Create such a system where the powers of the state are separated. That is what we call separation of powers. Please do not confuse it with distribution of powers. Distribution of powers is where the center and the state, they have their own areas of influence. They have their own set of powers. They have their own roles and responsibilities. Separation of powers is the state itself, center. Or we should say the state in the form of the country. Their powers are to be separated. Create a separate body whose job is to make laws. Create a separate body whose job is to implement the laws. Create a separate body whose job is to punish the people who have committed any wrong. That is what we call separation of powers. And Montesquieu, he called it a tripartite system. Although he did not use the term separation of powers, he used the term distribution of powers. But we don't call it distribution of powers, we call it separation of powers. Montesquieu writes in his book, The Spirit of the Laws, written way back in 1748, that various forms of distribution of political power among a legislature, executive, and judiciary is necessary. Necessary, why? Because it will prevent excessive centralization of power. And if this happens, it will deepen democracy. How does it deepen democracy? Listen to me carefully. This is what Montesquieu writes in his book, In Spirit of Laws. I will read it, then I will explain it. But while reading it, you will be able to understand. When the legislative and executive powers are united in the same person or the same body, clear? There can be no liberty. I'll explain how. Again, there is no liberty if judicial power is not separated from the legislative and executive powers. Imagine a situation where the judicial power and the legislative power is with the same individual. Judicial power and legislative power is with the same individual. For example, I am the king. I am making laws. And whoever violates this law, I am the judge as well. I will punish that individual. How? I'm saying whoever teaches on Unacademy Plus and is a polity teacher and teaches from 6 to 9, he is a criminal. I'm teaching right now. And now the same person who brought this law, now he's saying, come here, you are guilty, you hang by your neck till death. How bad this law is? What is the rationale behind this law? This is a horrible law. This is unfair law. This is unjust law. And as soon as I'm using these adjectives, unfair, unjust, hang, death, gone. There's no liberty. There's no freedom available to me. Now imagine it this way. When the judicial power is joined with the executive power, for example, what is the executive arm of the government? Police. Enforcement Directorate, for example. Enforcement Directorate today summons Farooq Abdullah. Enforcement Directorate yesterday summons Hemant Soren. Enforcement Directorate may summon Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Baba, come here. You are summoned. You are arrested. But how can you arrest me? Where is the charge sheet? What is the allegation? So if you want to challenge this, go to the judge. Judge can protect you. And when Rahul Baba goes to the judge, I'm there as well. Your arrest is legal. There is no liberty. That is why Montesquieu said, if we need to deepen democracy, if we need to ensure liberty, for that the state, we need to have a tripartite system where the powers of the state are separated. Legislature will have its own power, executive will have its own power, judiciary will have its own power. And not just this, non-interference. Or should we say non-influence? Executive cannot influence the judiciary. So we can say even if powers are separated, there is executive, there is legislature, there is judiciary. But these should be separated in a watertight arrangement so that one organ does not influence the other organ. Executive calling the judge, Rahul Baba is coming, don't give him bail. That should not happen because one arm of the government, one arm of the state cannot influence another arm. Not just this, you cannot be the member of more than one organ. If you are part of the legislature, you cannot be part of judiciary. If you are part of judiciary, you cannot be part of executive. If you are part of executive, you cannot be part of legislature. So clear-cut separation of powers into 3 organs, separated in a watertight arrangement, so that one member is not a member of another organ, so that one organ does not influence another organ. That is required for liberty. That is required for deepening democracy, and that is what we call separation of powers. Montesquieu wrote, there would be an end of everything. Whether the same man or same body, whether these men are common citizens or these are nobles, if there would be an end of everything, if the same man or same body were to exercise these powers together. And that is what former American President James Madison said when he said concentration of power is tyranny. The accumulation of all powers, whether it is legislative, executive, judicial, in the same hands, in the same body, in the same person, may justly be pronounced as the very definition of tyranny, a despotic rule. That is why we should have separation of powers. And United States was perhaps the first country to implement separation of powers. And separation of powers is constitutionally recognized in the United States. How? Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 of the US Constitution. Article 1 creates the saying, all legislative powers are with the Congress. So US Congress is the legislature. All executive powers are vested with the President of the United States of America. All the judicial powers are with the Supreme Court. And it is such a watertight arrangement. Is Joe Biden part of US Congress? Anybody? No. Are the ministers, is Anthony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, part of the US Congress? No. That means it's a clear-cut separation of powers. Where the members of the legislature, they're not part of executive. Where members of the executive, they're not part of judiciary. Where members of the judiciary, they're not part of the legislature. And they have a clear-cut separation of powers. One organ cannot influence the other organ. That is separation of powers. But the United States realized that merely separation of powers would not be sufficient. Why? Because then these 3 organs may run in their own direction and would trample down upon the Constitution. How? What if legislature, US Congress, passes a law which is bad, immoral, unjust, unreasonable, or any other adjective that you might want to use? Separation of powers would ensure that this law continues. Why? Because who has the power to make laws? Legislature. Can there be another entity or any other entity which can make laws? No. Only legislature can make laws. And can another organ influence this legislature? No. Executive can implement any policy. Joe Biden says, from now onwards, we will give $20 billion worth of aid to Israel we will give them weapons of mass destruction so that they can annihilate the entire population of West Bank and Gaza. And Joe Biden will openly say that our government's policy is to commit genocide in Israel, in Palestinian lands. Can legislature stop him from doing this? No. Can judiciary stop him from doing this? No. Because I am the head of the executive. I can do whatever I want to do. Can any other organ stop me from doing this? No. Can any other organ play my role? No. Judiciary. We have seen problems of gun laws in United States, where anybody can own a gun. And we have seen these laws have been misused, where there have been shootings in the school. We also saw a 6-year-old child kill her teacher. That's why I teach online, because you may also be possessing a gun. Imagine that situation. But imagine that situation where now the perpetrator of that crime is brought before the court. Court looks at this individual. You are white man's burden, right? You are set free. But who did you kill? This black guy. You are guilty. You hang by your neck till death. But I'm already dead. Okay, then your parents are dead. Your whole family is dead. There will be no one to keep a check on judiciary. Because what did Montesquieu say? Tripartite arrangement. The powers of the state are to be separated into legislature, executive, judiciary. One organ cannot influence the another organ. And at the same time, if you are a member of the legislature, you cannot be part of executive, you cannot be part of judiciary. If such a situation exists, if real watertight arrangement exists, the makers of the US Constitution, which created separation of powers, implemented separation of powers because of Article 1, 2, and 3, they realized, no, apart from separation of powers, what we need a doctrine of checks and balances. So that one organ can keep a check on another organ. So that if a law passed by the Parliament, by the US Congress, is against the spirit of the Constitution, is against the policies of the Constitution, the court will declare that law is unconstitutional. If Joe Biden does this, he may be impeached by the legislature. If Joe Biden does this, judiciary may say you don't have that power, we are striking down this policy. If the judges are also differentiating or discriminating between people based on their color, they can be removed from their offices by other organs of the state. That's how we can keep a check on each other. That is what we call doctrine of checks and balances. And that doctrine of checks and balances, we will discuss tomorrow. And then we will also understand tomorrow whether in India, do we follow separation of powers? To what extent? Do we follow doctrine of checks and balances? To what extent? And tomorrow we will discuss what is constitutionalism. Tomorrow we will discuss what are the different types of majorities that we find mentioned in the Constitution, which is required for the civil service exam. And then possibly tomorrow, we will also take up the discussion on the preamble. Clear? Those of you who understood the class, raise your hands. Otherwise, I have a gun. Okay, great. If you have any doubts, please let me know. Then we will end the class. Or let's do one thing. Don't ask me anything right now. Just revise whatever you have understood today. Revise the PPT. Tomorrow, whatever doubts you have, shoot. So raise hand option is for call. Okay. So how do I know whether you have understood or not? Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you have understood the class. Others, they don't want to raise their hands or they don't want to thumbs up. At least give me a Coke. Okay. Namaste, sir. Could change time of this course from 6:30 AM onwards. We have a class from 6. What difference would it make if we start at 6:30? Just half an hour. Sir, in this batch, approximately how much time will it take to complete GS syllabus? Please go through the year-long timetable that's mentioned there. Current affairs on Plus, you will be notified, I think, in 2 weeks from now. In 15 days, we will start with current affairs. I don't have a Telegram channel, not on social media, neither on Facebook, nor Instagram, nor Twitter, nor Snapchat, whatever chat, no chat. Okay, thank you so much for staying with me. See you tomorrow, 6 o'clock in the morning. Till then, have a great time. All the best. Bye-bye.